Emily Carter had always been the kind of person who put others before herself. For more than 10 years, she worked tirelessly as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, a place where patients often described her as an angel in scrubs. Her colleagues admired her dedication, and her supervisors praised her ability to stay calm under pressure. Emily wasn't just doing a job, she was living her purpose. Every day, she walked into the hospital with one goal: to help people feel better, even if it was just for a moment. She believed that small acts of kindness could make a big difference, and she carried that belief with her everywhere she went. But life has a way of testing even the strongest people, and Emily was about to face one of her toughest challenges yet. One rainy afternoon, as gray clouds loomed overhead and raindrops tapped against the windows, Emily received news that would change everything. The hospital administration called all the staff into the conference room for an emergency meeting. Emily sat quietly in the back, clutching her pen and notepad, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. Something felt off. The director of the hospital stood at the front of the room, his expression grim. He cleared his throat and began speaking. "Due to unforeseen budget cuts," he said slowly, "we've been forced to make some difficult decisions." Emily's heart sank as she listened to him explain how certain positions would be eliminated to save costs. Nurses, janitors, and other essential workers were being let go, not because they weren't good at their jobs, but because the hospital simply couldn't afford to keep them on payroll anymore. When the list of names was read aloud, Emily heard hers among them. At first, she thought there must have been a mistake. How could this happen? She had poured her heart and soul into her work, showing up early, staying late, and always going above and beyond for her patients. But as the reality set in, tears welled up in her eyes. This wasn't just a job. It was her identity. Being a nurse was who she was, and now suddenly, it was being taken away from her. After the meeting ended, Emily returned to her station to collect her things. Colleagues offered hugs and words of encouragement, but nothing could soften the blow. As she packed her belongings into a small cardboard box, memories flooded her mind. The countless hours spent comforting worried families, the joy of seeing a patient recover after surgery, the quiet moments when she held someone's hand during their darkest hour. All of it felt like it was slipping through her fingers. It was hard to imagine walking out of the hospital doors without a plan for what came next. On her way home, still wearing her scrubs, Emily stopped by a convenience store to grab a few groceries. The rain hadn't let up, and the streets were slick with water. Her car, a reliable but aging sedan, sputtered slightly as she pulled into the parking lot. She sighed deeply, feeling the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her shoulders. What was she going to do now? Bills were piling up, and finding another nursing position wouldn't be easy. Hospitals were cutting staff left and right, and competition for jobs was fierce. For the first time in years, Emily felt completely lost. As she stepped inside the store, Emily tried to push her worries aside and focus on the task at hand. She grabbed a basket and wandered through the aisles, picking up essentials like bread, milk, and eggs. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow over the shelves. A child laughed somewhere in the distance, and the cashier greeted customers with a cheerful smile. Life went on around her, oblivious to the storm brewing inside Emily's mind. While waiting in line to pay, Emily glanced out the window and noticed a man standing near his car in the parking lot. He looked middle-aged, dressed in a sharp suit that seemed out of place in the dreary weather. Something about him caught her attention. He appeared pale and unsteady, leaning heavily against his vehicle. Before she could think twice, the man collapsed onto the wet pavement. Panic rippled through the parking lot as bystanders rushed toward him, unsure of what to do. Without hesitation, Emily dropped her grocery basket and ran outside. Years of training kicked in as she assessed the situation. The man was clutching, his chest gasping for air, clearly in distress. Emily knelt beside him, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked firmly, checking for a pulse. When he didn't respond, she immediately began performing CPR, counting each compression aloud. Her voice cut through the chaos, directing bystanders to call 911 and retrieve a defibrillator from the store. Time seemed to slow down as Emily worked tirelessly to save the man's life. Rain soaked through her scrubs, and her knees ached from kneeling on the hard asphalt, but she didn't stop. She thought about all the times she had done this exact thing in the hospital, surrounded by equipment and support staff. Now, alone in a parking lot, she relied solely on her instincts and training. After what felt like an eternity, the paramedics arrived and took over, stabilizing the man enough to transport him to the nearest hospital. Exhausted and drenched, Emily stepped back, watching as the ambulance sped away. Someone handed her a towel to dry off, and a few people thanked her for her quick thinking. But Emily didn't stick around to bask in their gratitude. Quietly, she retrieved her groceries and headed home, her mind racing with thoughts of the man she had saved, and the uncertain future that awaited her. Little did she know, this act of kindness would soon lead to a series of events that would change her life forever. The rain continued to pour as Emily drove home, her mind replaying the events of the evening. Her scrubs were still damp, clinging uncomfortably to her skin, and her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. She couldn't shake the image of the man lying motionless on the wet pavement, his face pale and contorted in pain. Though she had done everything she could to save him, a part of her worried that it might not have been enough. What if he didn't make it? What if her efforts had been too little too late? But as much as her thoughts lingered on the stranger in the parking lot, they also kept circling back to her own life. Losing her job had left her feeling powerless, like she was drifting aimlessly without direction. For years, she had defined herself by her role as a nurse, by the lives she touched and the difference she made every day. Now stripped of that identity, she felt like a ship lost at sea, unsure of where to go or what to do next. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. When Emily finally arrived home, she parked her car in the driveway and sat there for a moment, staring out at the rain-soaked street. Her small house looked cozy from the outside, with its faded blue shutters and flower pots lining the porch. But inside, it felt empty, quiet in a way that echoed her growing anxiety. After grabbing her groceries from the trunk, she stepped inside and locked the door behind her, dropping the bags onto the kitchen counter. Emily peeled off her wet scrubs and changed into dry clothes, but the chill from earlier lingered. She brewed a cup of tea, hoping the warmth would soothe her nerves, and curled up on the couch with a blanket draped over her shoulders. The television buzzed softly in the background, but she barely paid attention to the news anchor talking about local events. Instead, her thoughts drifted back to the man in the parking lot. Who was he? Did he have a family waiting for him somewhere? Was he okay? Unbeknownst to Emily, the man she had saved was already awake and recovering in the hospital. His name was Richard Holloway, a self-made entrepreneur who had built a successful empire from the ground up. He wasn't just wealthy, he was influential, known for his sharp business acumen and generous philanthropy. But none of that mattered when he found himself gasping for air in a convenience store parking lot, moments away from losing consciousness. In those critical seconds, Richard's life had rested in the hands of a stranger, a woman whose compassion and skill had pulled him back from the brink. As Richard lay in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors and surrounded by medical staff, his mind raced with questions. Who was the woman in scrubs who had saved him? Where had she come from? Why had she disappeared so quickly after performing CPR? He remembered fragments of the scene, the sound of her voice cutting through the chaos, the steady rhythm of her compressions, the determination etched on her face. Though their interaction had been brief, Richard knew one thing for certain: this woman had changed his life. Determined to find her, Richard began asking questions. He spoke to the paramedics who had responded to the scene, describing the nurse in detail. He reached out to the convenience store manager requesting security footage from the parking lot, and he even called the local hospitals, inquiring if anyone had reported witnessing the incident. It wasn't long before pieces of the puzzle started coming together. Someone mentioned seeing a name tag on the woman's scrubs: Emily Carter. Another person recalled hearing her mention St. Mary's Hospital. With this information, Richard launched a deeper search. A quick online query revealed that Emily Carter had recently been laid off from St. Mary's due to budget cuts. Richard's heart sank as he read the news articles detailing the layoffs. Here was a woman who had dedicated her life to helping others, only to be cast aside when the hospital needed to cut costs. Yet despite her personal struggles, she had stopped everything to save a complete stranger. To Richard, this act of selflessness spoke volumes about Emily's character. By the next morning, Richard had pieced together enough information to track down Emily's address. He wanted to thank her personally, not just with words, but with something meaningful. As someone who had faced hardships early in life, Richard understood the importance of second chances. He believed in paying it forward, using his resources to uplift others whenever possible. And now he saw an opportunity to do just that. Richard gathered his family and closest associates, explaining what had happened and why he wanted to show his gratitude. Together, they came up with a plan. 4 luxury cars, a sleek black Mercedes, a shiny red Ferrari, a polished silver Porsche, and a classic white Rolls-Royce were arranged to create a memorable display. Each vehicle represented a different aspect of Richard's success, symbolizing the opportunities he hoped to extend to Emily. Early the following afternoon, Richard and his entourage arrived at Emily's modest home. The sight of 4 high-end cars pulling into her driveway immediately drew attention from neighbors who peered curiously out their windows. Emily, meanwhile, was inside cooking lunch when she heard the commotion outside. Confused, she walked to the front door and opened it cautiously, unsure of what awaited her. Standing in the middle of her driveway was Richard Holloway, dressed in a tailored suit and holding an umbrella to shield himself from the light drizzle. Behind him stood 3 other individuals, each leaning casually against one of the luxury cars. Emily blinked in disbelief, wondering if she was dreaming. "Ms. Carter?" Richard called out, his voice warm and sincere. "May I have a word?" Still holding the doorframe for support, Emily nodded hesitantly and stepped outside. "Yes? Can I help you?" she asked, her tone laced with confusion. Richard smiled and extended his hand. "My name is Richard Holloway," he said. "I'm the man you saved last night in the parking lot." Emily's eyes widened in recognition. Oh my goodness," she stammered, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. I didn't know it was you. I mean, I didn't think." Richard chuckled softly, putting her at ease. "Please, let me explain," he said. "I owe you my life, Ms. Carter. If it weren't for your quick thinking and incredible skill, I wouldn't be standing here today. I wanted to come personally to thank you and to offer you something more than just words." Emily shook her head, waving off the idea. No, please don't feel obligated," she insisted. "I was just doing what any nurse would do. That's my job, or well, it used to be." Her honesty struck a chord with Richard. He admired her humility, but he also recognized the weight of her situation. Losing a job you loved couldn't be easy, especially for someone as passionate and dedicated as Emily. Determined to make a difference, Richard pressed on. "These cars aren't just here for show," he explained. "Each one represents an opportunity for you to continue making a difference in people's lives. I'd like to offer you a position as the head nurse at a new clinic I'm funding. It's designed to provide affordable health care to underserved communities, and I can't think of anyone better suited for the role." Emily's jaw dropped. She stared at Richard, then at the cars, struggling to process what he was saying. "Are you serious?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Completely," Richard replied with a reassuring smile. "You've already proven that you're capable of extraordinary things. Let me help you take the next step." For a moment, Emily was speechless. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the magnitude of what was happening. Just hours ago, she had been consumed by fear and uncertainty, wondering how she would survive without a job. Now standing before her was a chance to start anew, to turn her passion for nursing into something even greater. I don't know what to say," Emily admitted, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you doesn't seem like enough." "You don't need to thank me," Richard said gently. Just promise me you'll keep doing what you do best, helping others. The world needs more people like you, Ms. Carter." And with those words, Emily knew her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. The morning after Richard Holloway's unexpected visit, Emily woke up feeling like she was living in a dream. Her small house, usually quiet and unassuming, now seemed different, brighter somehow. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting golden patterns on the walls. The air smelled fresher, as if the world itself had conspired to lift her spirits. But it wasn't just the weather that made everything feel new. It was the memory of those 4 luxury cars parked outside her home, the heartfelt gratitude in Richard's voice, and the promise of a second chance at doing what she loved most, helping others. As she sipped her coffee, sitting at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around the warm mug, Emily replayed the events of the previous day in her mind. She remembered the disbelief on her face when she opened the door to find Richard standing there, surrounded by gleaming vehicles that looked more at home in a magazine than on her modest street. She recalled the sincerity in his eyes as he explained why he wanted to help her, not because he felt obligated, but because he genuinely admired her courage and selflessness. And then there was the offer itself, a position as head nurse at a state-of-the-art clinic designed to serve people who desperately needed affordable health care. It all sounded too good to be true. Yet, deep down, Emily knew this wasn't some fleeting moment of luck or charity. This was an opportunity, a chance to rebuild not only her career but also her sense of purpose. Still, the enormity of it left her overwhelmed. Could she really step into such a big role? Would she live up to the expectations Richard clearly had for her? These questions swirled in her mind, but one thing was certain. She couldn't let fear hold her back. Life had thrown her a lifeline, and she was determined to grab onto it with both hands. Later that morning, Richard called to check in. His tone was warm and encouraging, like that of an old friend rather than someone she had met just once. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I know yesterday must have been a lot to take in." Emily hesitated for a moment before responding. "To be honest, I'm still processing everything," she admitted. It's overwhelming, but in the best possible way. I've always wanted to make a difference, especially for people who don't have access to proper care. If this clinic can do that, I'd be honored to be part of it." Richard chuckled softly. "That's exactly why I thought of you," he said. "You didn't hesitate to save my life, even though you were going through your own struggles. That tells me everything I need to know about the kind of person you are. And trust me, we're going to build something incredible together." His words filled Emily with a mix of excitement and nervousness. She couldn't deny the spark of hope igniting within her. For years, she had dreamed of working in a setting where resources weren't stretched thin, where patients weren't turned away because they couldn't afford treatment. Now, thanks to Richard's generosity, that dream was within reach. But along with the excitement came responsibility, the weight of ensuring that the clinic succeeded, that it became everything Richard envisioned and more. Over the next few days, Emily threw herself into preparing for her new role. Richard arranged for her to tour the clinic site, which was still under construction, but already impressive. Located in a bustling neighborhood known for its underserved population, the building was modern yet inviting, with large windows that let in natural light and open spaces designed to make patients feel comfortable. As Emily walked through the unfinished halls, she could almost picture the future. Doctors and nurses bustling about, patients being treated with dignity and care, and families leaving with smiles on their faces. During the tour, Richard introduced her to the architects, designers, and project managers overseeing the construction. They shared their vision for the clinic, emphasizing its focus on accessibility, innovation, and community impact. One feature stood out to Emily in particular: a dedicated wellness center that would offer free health screenings, nutrition workshops, and mental health support. "We want this place to be more than just a medical facility," Richard explained. "We want it to be a hub for empowerment, a place where people can take control of their health and their lives." Hearing those words solidified Emily's belief that she was meant to be here. This wasn't just another job, it was a mission. She began brainstorming ideas for programs and initiatives she could implement once the clinic opened. From organizing volunteer training sessions to partnering with local schools and organizations, she was eager to hit the ground running. Every detail mattered to her. Every decision felt personal. After all, this clinic wasn't just Richard's project, it was hers now too. But it wasn't just the professional aspect that excited Emily. On a personal level, she found herself inspired by Richard's philosophy of giving back. Over the course of several meetings, she learned more about his journey, from humble beginnings to becoming one of the most respected entrepreneurs in the city. Despite his success, he remained grounded, always looking for ways to use his wealth and influence to create positive change. His passion for philanthropy resonated deeply with Emily, reminding her of the values she had grown up with: kindness, compassion, and the importance of lifting others up. One afternoon, as they sat in Richard's office discussing plans for the clinic, Emily finally worked up the courage to ask him a question that had been on her mind. "Why me?" she said softly, her gaze fixed on the floor. "I mean, I'm grateful beyond words, but there are so many talented nurses out there. Why did you choose me?" Richard leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Because of how you acted in that parking lot," he replied without hesitation. "Anyone could have walked past me that night. Or worse, assumed someone else would step in. But you didn't. You ran toward the problem instead of away from it. That says a lot about your character, Emily. It tells me you're someone who leads with your heart, even when it's hard. And that's exactly the kind of leader this clinic needs." Tears pricked at the corners of Emily's eyes as she absorbed his words. No one had ever spoken about her that way before, at least not since her father, who used to tell her she had a gift for making people feel seen and valued. Hearing Richard echo those sentiments reignited a fire inside her, reminding her of why she had become a nurse in the first place. It wasn't for the accolades or the paycheck. It was for moments like these, for the chance to touch lives and leave the world a little better than she found it. As the weeks passed, Emily grew more confident in her ability to lead the clinic. With Richard's guidance, she began reaching out to other healthcare professionals, recruiting a team of passionate individuals who shared her vision. Together, they worked tirelessly to finalize plans, secure funding, and spread awareness about the clinic's mission. Word traveled fast, and soon local media outlets picked up the story. Headlines praised Richard's philanthropic efforts and highlighted Emily's heroic act in the parking lot. Overnight, she went from being an anonymous nurse struggling to make ends meet to a symbol of resilience and hope. Neighbors stopped by her house to congratulate her, strangers sent messages of encouragement, and former colleagues reached out to offer their support. At first, the attention made Emily uncomfortable. She didn't see herself as a hero, just someone doing what anyone else would have done. But as time went on, she realized the power of her story. People were inspired by her journey, by the idea that even in our darkest moments we have the potential to shine. Her actions reminded them that kindness is never wasted, that a single act of compassion can ripple outward and change countless lives. Despite the growing recognition, Emily remained humble. She continued to focus on the work ahead, knowing that the real test would come once the clinic opened its doors. Until then, she poured her energy into preparing for the challenges and triumphs that lay ahead. Each meeting, each phone call, each late-night brainstorming session brought her closer to fulfilling her dream. And with Richard by her side, offering wisdom and encouragement every step of the way, she felt unstoppable. By the time the clinic's grand opening approached, Emily had transformed, not just professionally, but personally. She no longer saw herself as a victim of circumstance, someone whose life had been derailed by bad luck. Instead, she viewed herself as a survivor, someone who had faced adversity head-on and emerged stronger for it. Losing her job at St. Mary's had been painful, but it had also led her to this moment, to a purpose greater than she could have imagined. And as she stood on the cusp of this new chapter, she felt ready to embrace whatever came next. The day of the clinic's grand opening arrived and Emily woke up before dawn, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. She had spent months preparing for this moment, planning, recruiting, training, and dreaming of the impact the clinic would have on the community. Now, as she stood in front of her mirror smoothing out the wrinkles in her crisp white coat, she felt a sense of pride she hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just another chapter in her life. It was a rebirth, a chance to redefine who she was and what she could achieve. As she drove to the clinic, the streets were already buzzing with activity. Volunteers scurried around the building, setting up tables, arranging chairs, and hanging banners that read, "Hope starts here." The air smelled faintly of fresh paint and polished wood, remnants of the construction crew's final touches. Outside, a line of people stretched down the block, eager to be among the first to visit the new facility. Many of them carried children in their arms or pushed elderly relatives in wheelchairs, their faces etched with hope and anticipation. For so long they had been denied access to quality healthcare because of cost or location. Today that barrier no longer existed. When Emily stepped inside, she was greeted by applause. Her team, the doctors, nurses, administrative staff, and volunteers she had worked tirelessly to assemble, stood waiting to welcome her. Their smiles were genuine, their energy infectious. It struck Emily how much trust Richard had placed in her when he handed over the reins of this project. These people weren't just employees. They were collaborators, united by a shared mission to make a difference. She took a deep breath and smiled back, feeling grateful for each and every one of them. Richard arrived shortly after, dressed in a tailored suit but radiating warmth and humility. He shook hands with staff members, exchanged hugs with volunteers, and greeted patients with the same sincerity he had shown Emily during their first meeting. When he finally approached her, his eyes sparkled with pride. "You've done an incredible job," he said, clasping her shoulder. "This place is exactly what I hoped it would be, and more." Emily blushed, waving off the compliment. "It's not just me," she replied. "Everyone here has worked so hard to make this happen. We couldn't have done it without you either." Richard chuckled. "I may have provided the resources, but you're the heart of this operation. Don't forget that." His words stayed with her throughout the day, fueling her determination to ensure everything ran smoothly. As the doors officially opened, Emily stationed herself near the entrance, welcoming patients and guiding them through the process. She watched as families marveled at the state-of-the-art equipment, as seniors chatted with friendly receptionists, and as children giggled while receiving free vaccinations. Every interaction reminded her why this work mattered. Healthcare wasn't just about treating illnesses, it was about restoring dignity, offering comfort, and giving people a reason to believe in a brighter future. One patient in particular left a lasting impression on Emily. A young mother named Maria came in holding her 6-year-old daughter Sophia, whose asthma had gone untreated for months due to financial constraints. Maria looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes betraying sleepless nights spent worrying about her child. But when Sophia received her inhaler and began breathing easier, Maria broke into tears of relief. She hugged Emily tightly, whispering, "Thank you. You saved us." Moments like these made all the late nights and early mornings worth it. They reminded Emily that behind every statistic or medical chart was a human being with dreams, fears, and a story worth hearing. And while she knew she couldn't solve every problem single-handedly, she believed that even small victories mattered. Each life touched was a step toward something bigger, a healthier, stronger community. By mid-afternoon, the crowd outside had thinned, but the energy inside remained electric. Local media crews set up cameras and microphones, interviewing staff members and capturing candid moments between patients and caregivers. One reporter approached Emily, asking her to share her thoughts on the clinic's opening. At first, Emily hesitated, unsure of what to say. Talking about herself had never come naturally to her. But as she glanced around the room, at the laughter of children playing in the wellness center, at the gratitude shining in patients' eyes, she found the words. "This clinic represents hope," she began, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. For too long, people in this community have been told they don't deserve access to quality care simply because they can't afford it. That's wrong, and we're here to change that. None of this would have been possible without Richard Holloway's vision and generosity, or without the dedication of everyone who helped bring this dream to life. But most importantly, this clinic exists because of the resilience of our patients. They remind us every day why we do what we do. Her speech earned a round of applause from those nearby, including Richard, who nodded approvingly. Later, as clips of the interview aired on local news channels, Emily's story reached even more people. Viewers were moved by her humility and inspired by her journey, from losing her job to becoming a beacon of hope for countless others. Messages poured in from strangers thanking her for her courage, while others expressed interest in volunteering or donating to the clinic. What started as a simple act of kindness in a parking lot had grown into something far greater than Emily ever imagined. But the day wasn't without its challenges. By evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast a golden glow over the clinic, Emily found herself facing a logistical issue. Supplies for certain medications were running low faster than expected, and several patients had been turned away earlier in the week due to scheduling conflicts. Frustration bubbled beneath the surface, threatening to overshadow the day's successes. Sitting alone in her office, Emily stared at the pile of paperwork on her desk, wondering if she was truly cut out for leadership. Just then, there was a soft knock at the door. Richard peeked his head in, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. Emily sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I don't know," she admitted. "We did so much today, but there are still so many problems to fix. I feel like I'm failing before we've even really started." Richard pulled up a chair and sat across from her, his expression thoughtful. "Let me tell you something," he said. "No matter how successful you become, there will always be obstacles. The key is to focus on progress, not perfection. Look at what you accomplished today. You gave hundreds of people access to care they wouldn't have otherwise had. That's success, Emily. Don't lose sight of it." His words hit home, easing some of the tension in her chest. He was right. Perfection wasn't the goal. Making a difference was. With renewed resolve, Emily returned to the main floor, determined to tackle the issues head-on. She rallied her team, assigning tasks and brainstorming solutions. By the end of the night, they had developed a plan to address supply shortages and streamline appointment scheduling. Exhausted but satisfied, Emily locked up the clinic and headed home, knowing she had taken another step toward fulfilling her mission. Over the following weeks, the clinic continued to thrive. Word spread quickly, drawing patients from neighboring towns and cities. Schools and community organizations partnered with the clinic to host workshops on nutrition, mental health, and preventive care. Local businesses donated supplies, and volunteers signed up in droves to lend a hand. Emily became a familiar face in the neighborhood, known not only for her medical expertise but also for her unwavering compassion. Whether it was comforting a frightened child listening to a struggling parent or mentoring a young nurse, she approached every task with the same level of dedication. Through it all, Richard remained a constant source of support. He checked in regularly, offering advice and encouragement whenever needed. Though he had initially envisioned the clinic as a standalone project, he soon realized its potential to inspire similar initiatives elsewhere. Together, he and Emily began exploring ways to expand their efforts, discussing plans to open additional clinics in underserved areas across the region. For Emily, this marked yet another turning point, a shift from leading one clinic to potentially influencing healthcare accessibility on a larger scale. Looking back on everything that had happened since that rainy afternoon in the convenience store parking lot, Emily couldn't help but marvel at how drastically her life had changed. Losing her job had felt like the end of the world at the time, but now she saw it as the beginning of something extraordinary. Through sheer determination and the kindness of strangers, she had transformed her pain into purpose. And though she knew there would be more hurdles ahead, she faced them with confidence, knowing she wasn't alone. She had a team, a community, and a legacy to build, one patient at a time. Quen 2.5 Max 12th, 53. AM. Months passed, and the clinic became more than just a place for medical care. It turned into a cornerstone of the community. Emily's leadership had blossomed in ways she never imagined possible. She wasn't just managing schedules or overseeing treatments. She was building connections, fostering trust, and creating an environment where people felt valued and respected. Her days were long and often exhausting, but they were also filled with moments of profound gratitude and fulfillment. Each smile from a patient, each heartfelt thank you reminded her why she had chosen this path in the first place. The clinic quickly earned a reputation as a beacon of hope, not only for its affordability, but also for its innovative approach to healthcare. The Wellness Center, which offered free health screenings and educational workshops, became especially popular. Families gathered there on weekends to learn about healthy eating habits, while seniors attended sessions on managing chronic conditions like diabetes and hypertension. Children participated in fun activities designed to teach them the importance of hygiene and exercise. It wasn't uncommon to see laughter echoing through the halls, even amidst serious conversations about health challenges. One initiative that stood out was Emily's mentorship program for young nurses and aspiring healthcare professionals. Having faced setbacks herself, she understood how daunting it could be to navigate the early stages of a career. She wanted to ensure that others didn't have to walk that road alone. Every Friday afternoon, she hosted informal meetings where participants could ask questions, share experiences, and receive guidance. These sessions weren't just about technical skills, they were about resilience, empathy, and finding joy in service. Many of the mentees credited Emily with reigniting their passion for nursing when they needed it most. As word of the clinic's success spread, local media continued to cover its impact. Stories poured in from patients whose lives had been transformed by the care they received. There was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who had avoided seeking treatment for years due to financial constraints, only to discover that her persistent cough was caused by easily treatable bronchitis. Or little Jacob, a shy boy with undiagnosed asthma, who finally got the medication he needed to run around without fear of collapsing. Then there was Carlos, a single father struggling to balance work and his daughter's medical needs, who found solace in the clinic's flexible scheduling and compassionate staff. These stories resonated deeply with readers, inspiring many to get involved. Donations poured in from individuals and businesses alike, allowing the clinic to expand its services and reach even more people. Volunteers signed up to assist with everything from administrative tasks to organizing community events. Even some former colleagues from St. Mary's Hospital reached out, offering their expertise or simply expressing admiration for Emily's achievements. For someone who had once felt abandoned by the system, it was heartwarming to see so much support pouring in from all directions. But perhaps the most unexpected development came when Richard approached Emily with a bold idea. "What if we took this model beyond this neighborhood?" he asked during one of their weekly check-ins. "Imagine opening clinics in other underserved areas, places where people are still being left behind." Emily's eyes lit up at the prospect, though her initial excitement was tempered by practical concerns. "It sounds amazing," she admitted, "but expanding would require resources we don't currently have. Plus, I'd hate to stretch ourselves too thin before we've fully established this location." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. We need to proceed carefully. But think about the potential. If we can replicate what we've built here, we could make a real difference on a larger scale. And you wouldn't be doing it alone. We'd bring in partners, secure funding, and build teams tailored to each community's unique needs." The idea lingered in Emily's mind long after their conversation ended. It was daunting, yes, but also exhilarating. Over the next few weeks, she began researching underserved areas nearby, identifying communities that could benefit from similar clinics. She collaborated with Richard to draft proposals outlining the vision, goals, and logistical requirements. Together, they met with potential donors, government officials, and nonprofit organizations, pitching the concept of a network of accessible healthcare facilities. To Emily's surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People were eager to invest in a project that promised tangible results. Within months, plans were underway to establish a second clinic in a neighboring town, known for its high poverty rates and limited access to medical services. This time, Emily played a dual role, leading operations at the original clinic while advising the team setting up the new location. Though juggling responsibilities was challenging, she thrived under the pressure, drawing strength from the knowledge that her efforts were helping more people than ever before. Meanwhile, Emily's story continued to inspire others far beyond her immediate circle. Local schools invited her to speak at career days, where students listened intently as she shared her journey, from losing her job to rebuilding her life and making a difference in her community. Churches and civic groups hosted fundraisers in her honor, raising thousands of dollars to support the clinic's expansion efforts. Strangers stopped her in grocery stores and coffee shops, thanking her for reminding them that kindness and perseverance could overcome even the toughest obstacles. Despite the growing recognition, Emily remained grounded. She refused to let accolades distract her from the work that mattered most. "This isn't about me," she often said during interviews or public appearances. "It's about the people we're serving, the mothers, fathers, children, and grandparents who deserve quality care regardless of their circumstances. If my story inspires someone else to take action, then that's wonderful. But the real heroes are the ones showing up every day to make this clinic run." Her humility only endeared her further to those around her. Staff members admired her ability to lead with grace and compassion, always prioritizing the well-being of both patients and employees. Volunteers appreciated her willingness to roll up her sleeves and pitch in whenever needed, whether it was restocking supplies or comforting a frightened child. Patients trusted her implicitly, knowing she genuinely cared about their recovery and overall quality of life. By the end of the year, the second clinic opened its doors, marking a significant milestone in Emily and Richard's mission. The grand opening mirrored the first, complete with cheering crowds, heartfelt speeches, and tears of joy. Standing alongside Richard, Emily reflected on how far they had come since that fateful day in the parking lot. What started as a single act of kindness had evolved into a movement, a testament to the power of collaboration, generosity, and unwavering belief in humanity's capacity for good. Yet, Emily knew this was only the beginning. As she looked out at the sea of hopeful faces gathered outside the new clinic, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. There were still countless communities in need, still barriers to break down and lives to touch. With Richard's continued partnership and the unwavering support of her team, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. After all, she had already proven that even in the darkest moments, light could shine through, and that sometimes, saving one life could lead to saving thousands more. A year had passed since Emily Carter saved Richard Holloway's life in that rainy convenience store parking lot, and the world around her had transformed in ways she could never have predicted. The clinic network she and Richard had envisioned together was no longer just a dream. It was a reality. 2 fully operational clinics now served communities that had long been neglected, offering affordable care, wellness programs, and educational workshops. Plans for a third location were already underway, with construction set to begin within months. But beyond the tangible achievements, the buildings, the staff, the patients, lay something even more profound. A legacy of kindness that rippled outward, touching lives far beyond what Emily or Richard could have imagined. On a crisp autumn morning, Emily stood alongside Richard at the grand opening of the second clinic. The event drew hundreds of people from nearby towns and cities, all eager to witness the unveiling of a facility they hoped would bring relief to their struggles. Banners fluttered in the breeze, balloons bobbed overhead, and cheerful chatter filled the air. Children ran around laughing, while adults exchanged stories of how healthcare, or the lack thereof, had shaped their lives. For many attendees, this wasn't just another ribbon-cutting ceremony. It was a symbol of hope, a promise that things could get better. As Emily addressed the crowd, her voice steady yet full of emotion, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. "This clinic exists because of you," she said, gesturing to the sea of faces before her. "Because of your resilience, your determination, and your belief that everyone deserves access to quality care. None of us are alone in this fight. Together we can create change, not just for ourselves but for future generations." Her words earned thunderous applause, not just from the audience, but also from the team standing behind her. Nurses, doctors, volunteers, and donors, all united by a shared vision, smiled proudly as cameras flashed and reporters jotted down notes. Among them was Maria, the young mother whose daughter Sophia had received treatment at the first clinic. Now, Maria worked part-time at the front desk, welcoming new patients with the same warmth and compassion she had experienced herself. Seeing her there, thriving and giving back, filled Emily with pride. Stories like Maria's reminded her that healing extended beyond physical ailments. It was about empowering people to reclaim their lives. Later that afternoon, after the festivities wound down, Emily found herself sitting quietly on a bench outside the clinic. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden hues over the landscape. Leaves crunched underfoot as visitors departed, leaving behind an almost sacred stillness. Richard joined her moments later, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Emily and sat beside her, his expression thoughtful. "You've done something incredible here," he said softly. "Not just with these clinics, but with the way you've inspired others to believe in themselves. I knew you were special the moment I met you, but even I couldn't have guessed how much impact you'd have." Emily shook her head, smiling faintly. "I didn't do this alone," she replied. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And then there's everyone else, the staff, the volunteers, the patients. They're the ones making this work. I'm just trying to keep up." Richard chuckled, leaning back against the bench. "That's exactly why you're so good at what you do. You give credit where it's due, and you lift others up instead of seeking the spotlight. Not everyone has that kind of humility." His words lingered in the cool air, prompting Emily to think about the countless lives intertwined with hers over the past year. There were the patients who walked through the clinic doors burdened by illness and left carrying hope. There were the young nurses she mentored, many of whom now spoke confidently about pursuing careers in underserved areas. And there were the strangers who reached out to share how her story had motivated them to volunteer, donate, or simply perform acts of kindness in their own communities. Each connection, no matter how small, contributed to a web of compassion that stretched farther than she ever thought possible. The ripple effect of Emily's actions became evident in unexpected ways. Local schools began incorporating lessons on empathy and service into their curriculums inspired by her example. Community groups organized fundraisers not only for the clinics but also for other charitable causes. Even businesses started reevaluating their practices, asking how they could contribute to social good. One company donated a fleet of vehicles to transport patients to and from appointments, while another provided free meals during community health fairs. It seemed as though Emily's simple act of saving a stranger's life had sparked a chain reaction, reminding people of the power of selflessness. But perhaps the most poignant reminder came during a quiet evening at home weeks later. As Emily sorted through mail accumulated during a busy day, she stumbled upon a handwritten letter tucked inside an envelope. The handwriting was shaky, the paper slightly worn, as if it had traveled a great distance. Intrigued, she unfolded it and began to read. "Dear Ms. Carter, I don't know where to begin except to say thank you. My name is James, and I'm a retired teacher living in a small town near the second clinic. A few months ago, I was diagnosed with diabetes, a condition I had ignored for years because I couldn't afford proper care. When I heard about your clinic, I decided to take a chance. That decision saved my life. What struck me most wasn't just the treatment I received. It was the kindness I encountered every step of the way. From the receptionist who greeted me warmly to the nurse who patiently explained my medication, I felt seen and valued. For the first time in years, I feel hopeful about the future. So thank you for your courage, your compassion, and your belief that no one should be left behind." Sincerely, James' tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she finished reading. Letters like this weren't uncommon. They arrived regularly, each one a testament to the difference the clinics were making. Yet somehow James's words resonated deeply, encapsulating everything Emily had hoped to achieve. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer reserved for keepsakes, a reminder of why she woke up every morning ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the months rolled on, Emily continued to lead with passion and purpose. Under her guidance, the clinics expanded their services to include mental health counseling, addiction recovery programs, and prenatal care. Partnerships with local organizations allowed them to tackle broader issues like food insecurity and housing instability, addressing the root causes of poor health rather than just treating symptoms. Meanwhile, Richard remained a steadfast ally, using his influence to advocate for policy changes that supported accessible healthcare nationwide. By the following spring, the third clinic opened its doors, bringing the total number of facilities to 3. At the dedication ceremony, Emily stood side by side with Richard, watching as families explored the bright, welcoming space. Volunteers handed out informational brochures, while staff members guided newcomers through registration. In the background, a band played lively tunes, adding to the festive atmosphere. As Emily gazed out at the bustling scene, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for what they had accomplished, but for the journey that had led them here. That evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Emily and Richard shared a quiet moment on the clinic steps. The air smelled of fresh grass and blooming flowers, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves above. Do you ever stop and think about how different your life might have been if none of this had happened? Richard asked, breaking the silence. Emily smiled, her gaze fixed on the distant skyline. All the time, she admitted. Losing my job was devastating, but it forced me to confront fears I didn't even realize I had. It taught me that sometimes, the hardest moments lead to the greatest opportunities. If I hadn't been in that parking lot that day, I wouldn't be here now. With you, with this mission, with the chance to make a real difference. Richard nodded, his expression softening. And if I hadn't collapsed in that parking lot, I might never have met someone like you. Someone who reminds me why I started doing this work in the first place. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, reflecting on the twists and turns that had brought them together. Neither could have predicted the path their lives would take, but both were grateful for the destination. For Emily, it was proof that even in our darkest hours we have the power to create light, not just for ourselves, but for others. And for Richard, it was a reminder that true success isn't measured by wealth or accolades, but by the lives we touch along the way. In the end, Emily's story wasn't just about saving a man's life or building a network of clinics. It was about resilience, compassion, and the boundless potential of human connection. It was about turning pain into purpose, fear into courage, and uncertainty into hope. And as she looked toward the future, Emily knew one thing for certain. The best was yet to come.